Is it on? Thank you. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. What a quiet response. Alright. So, as mentioned to you guys before, today we're gonna hopefully look at, the battles of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, specifically the Battle of Badr. Just for a candy, does anybody know which battle was this? Was this the battle we won or the battle we lost? Battle of Badr. Hands up, so you lost the point. Right, so yeah. Won, well done. Okay, so, right. So it's a battle that we won, right? And it's also known as the day of what? The day of, so it's known as a very specific day. The day of, what is it?
It's the day that, it's
in Arabic.
Near this time is the time when the Qibla changed, like 3 weeks before.
No, what's the day known as? The day of Furqan, when everything is established from right, from wrong, from just, from unjust, from Islam, from Kufr. Everything is known as the split. Everything is made distinction between everything else. So it's a very phenomenal day. And the reason why is because the Muslims were at odds, essentially. The Muslims were at odds. There was a 3-to-1 ratio. How many Muslims were there?
300.
About 300, right? And how many non-Muslims were, how many Qurayshi people were there? About 1,000. So that gives you a rough estimate that they were heavily playing the underdog card. And for them to still come out victorious is a huge thing. And the main reason why they won is because A, they're standing for the sake of Islam, that's the first thing. And number two, once you put that trust in Allah, He will give you support in ways you cannot imagine. So no way on earth did the companions expect 1,000 angels to come down and start whooping the Qurayshi people, And that's what happened in that battle. But today I don't want to focus specifically on who killed who, what happened where. That's not my intention with this sort of study. What I really wanted to show you is that clarify a few things in terms of what is jihad, because that's apparently like the what's it called, controversial word. And number two, to give you some moral principles that you can derive and really apply like immediately after today, inshallah, as you leave the class. So let's discuss. Okay, the controversial word jihad. What is jihad? As the Americans say, jihad, the jihad. What is jihad? Struggle. Okay. So, are we allowed to kill people on the street? Sure. Oh, right. Okay. Okay. So, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, it comes from the Arabic word jahada, which means to struggle. But then there's different levels of jihad. There's jihad of a nafs. There's jihad. There's obviously jihad al-qital. There is jihad in the warfield, and it does have its rewards as well. We can't ignore that. But at the same time, I think the jihad of the nafs is much bigger than the jihad of the sword.
Okay. Any comments from sisters? What is jihad? If someone were to ask you what is jihad, how would you respond to that? Or how would you try and justify that? Does it exist? Does it not exist? Should we be apologetic for its existence? Why do you have jihad in the first place? Any ideas? Are you a sister now?
That's why I put my hand up.
No. Okay, no worries. Okay, give equal chance. Okay, so you're right. So there are 3 levels of jihad. 3 levels. You've got jihad of your body, and that doesn't just incorporate killing people. That's also staying away and restraining yourself from bad things. So from stealing, from doing adultery and stuff like that. That's the jihad of the physical body, right? There's also the jihad of the mind. And that is when you use your intellectual capability to propagate Islam or to have debates with Islam. So when we have our scholars who are going up against, people who are attacking the religion, who are trying to criticize our religion, and when Muslim scholars or preachers, they go up and try to have intellectual debates with them, that is the intellectual form of jihad. So learning, what you're doing now, is, alhamdulillah, inshallah, may Allah accept it, intellectual jihad for you, right? There are, I think there's even a tradition to support that where if any of you leaves your house to go learn for the sake of Allah, to improve the society around you, and you die along that process, there's only 1 degree difference between you and the Prophet. 1 degree difference between you and the Prophet. So that's a big one. And that's a tradition you can clarify. So I'm not saying wish to die when you leave the classroom. So I'm just saying that that's one of the traditions that exist. And then the final thing, you have jihad of the nafs. And jihad of the nafs is probably the biggest one, because that's when you're consistently trying to rectify yourself, correct yourself, and also stay away from the temptations that surround you. So, I mean, as students definitely were bombarded in and out by several different things. You've got lusts, you've got alcohol, you've got drugs, all these things come into play. And when you try and resist that, that's jihad in nafs. And that's the highest form of jihad by far. I mean, there's one brother, he put it quite nicely. He said that it's very easy for me to go out and fight. It's very easy for me to go out and fight. And if I die, okay, fine, I die. But it's much harder that I live a long life of 80 years and fight with my nafs. It's a very, very good way to put at it, right? Now, we have to understand that jihad does play a part in warfare. It has played a part in warfare, but only under certain situations and circumstances. It's not there for anyone to do. It's not there for, as soon as I see a non-Muslim, yep, there we go, that's my excuse. It doesn't work like that. You have to understand that it was always a defensive maneuver that the Prophet ﷺ attacked, right? And you also have to understand that the Prophet ﷺ was first in which city? Which city was he in? What's the big city he was in initially? Mecca, right? He was in Mecca. And how long was he in Mecca for?
13 years.
13 years. So they were prosecuted, the Muslims were prosecuted for a full, straight 13 years, right? And not once did the Prophet ﷺ ever attack. Not once, right? And bear in mind, they were not just like prosecuted like a slap on the face or anything. They were speared, they were thrashed, they were, raced around the sand. They had rocks and stones thrown upon them. These were hardcore prosecutions. Something like, we like take a prick, boom, you get hurt. These guys went through hardcore punishment. And only after 13 years did the Prophet ﷺ get permission from Allah that, okay, now you can go out and fight. Only now you can go out and fight. I'm telling you what, that there are certain conditions attached to the place. And now is not the time to discuss them. Inshallah, when we have a more scholarly person, they can probably show you the fiqh of warfare in Islam. But the point that I wanted to make was, warfare is the last step that you use. It is the last step that you use. So there's a very interesting analogy in another seerah book, Sirat al-Mustafa. It's a 3-volume book in English, written by Maulana Khandalvi. Very good book, I recommend it. He says that, imagine that you have a boil on your skin. So those boils that you have when you get burns, or when you have just some sort of rash or something. You get those boils on your skin, right? He said the first step you use, you try and put an ointment on it, like a cream, right? Just to see if it works or not. And if then that doesn't work, then you try to get surgical removal, right? You try to surgically remove it. You go to the doctor saying, can you please cut this ugly thing off of my skin, right? And even if that doesn't work, then the next step is you've got to amputate your limb. That's the next step, So these are the stage-by-stage processes. Are you a doctor? Okay, so you were disagreeing, I was just checking, okay, right, okay, sorry. So, but you get my point, you get the analogy. So it's a stage-by-stage process. You only cut off until you reach the final stage, and you can't do anything more about it. Now, so that's the first thing which we want to clarify. Another thing is that you've got to make sure you understand everything holistically and within context, right? If you imagine you're seeing a movie playing in front of you, and you see a person, just a random person, he's got nothing on, he's like a normal guy, and he's killing someone. He's literally sawing off someone's arm. What is the first picture that comes in your mind? That he's a what? He's a madman. What else? Why are sisters silent today? Imagine you've got a scenario. There's a normal man, right? And he's sawing off somebody's arm in front of you, right? What is the first adjective that comes into your mind? Sorry? He's a murderer, all right? He's an insane person, etc., right? Now, imagine the same situation, but then that person has a doctor's outfit on him. Surgery. Surgery. It changes a positive thing. Same person, but different clothes, right? Just like that. If you don't see the seerah in the correct perspective, you can justify anything about the Prophet ﷺ. You can justify he's a serial mass killer. You can justify he's a pedophile. You can do anything you want. Astaghfirullah al-Azim, but that's what you can do. So one of the things that we need to understand is, how do we view the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ? And the starting point of that process is, first, do you even believe if he's the Prophet? Do you even believe he's the last man? He's the man who brought the message for us? That's the starting point of that question. And only when you have that correct perspective and believe firmly that this is the final authority that I have from Allah, you will not be able to look at His seerah with a consistent manner. So like, you're having problems with Isra and Miraj, believing in that. That's a starting point. Do you get where I'm coming from now? Right? So that's how you, inshallah, should look at it with a holistic manner. So that's a bit of an introduction, inshallah, towards jihad, warfare, and also how to look holistically towards the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, so does anybody know how actually it'll start off? We're going to now dive deep into the historical analysis. Battle of Badr, how did the whole thing start off? I mean, did it just happen out of nowhere? You know, boom! That's it. Any ideas? Yes?
I think the Prophet ﷺ sent some people into Makkah, and they were gonna they were just basically gonna raid a caravan. I think it started with that.
Where the Muslims going to sell their stuff.
Sorry?
The Muslims ran away to Medina. And the Muslims going to sell their stuff in Syria.
So Muslims ran away, and then?
You know Muslims in Mecca?
Yeah.
They sell the Muslims property and clothes and their wealth.
Okay. And where did you find that? Where did you read that?
I was told.
Oh, you're told that. Okay, right, okay. No, I'm not saying you're wrong or right. I just want to get people to talk about it. How did Battle Badr start? Sisters, any idea? Okay, so, I think you went through this. Okay, so I think a big reality check for all of us is that we really need to start reading, first of all. That's one of the main things, right? That's why I got that book, which you see in front of me. That's one of the best books in English to get. So Ibn Kathir, one book, easy to read. Now, I'm telling you again, I'm just giving you a quick spectrum, right? If you want to get more details, read the book, or I highly recommend Sheikh Yasir Qadi's Seerah lecture series. It's up on YouTube all the way from the beginning towards now, I think. It's running towards the end. It's a very, very good YouTube documentary of the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, it all started off when the people of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and also the Prophet himself, they migrated towards Medina, right? And that's when the Islamic State was established. So you always have these two phases. You've got Mecca and you've got Medina. Now it was in Medina that the Prophet ﷺ, he got the green light from God. Yes, now you can attack. You can attack if you want. Now, from a very commonsensical point of view, if somebody comes and takes over your property, your wealth, right? Your family has also been abducted by some of these people. You have full right to go and take your property back, no? Right? Is that not correct? Or would you go like, okay, no, please go ahead, I'll help you steal as well, go ahead. No? So you would always take it back. And this is even political science. Even in political science, if somebody attacks your country, you do everything to retaliate, to get your land back, to get your property back, to get your family back. Now, what happened was, what happened was a lot of people, they lost their money, they lost their family members, they even lost some of their property when they left for the sake of Islam. So it was just their right to go back and take it up. Now, what's it called? So there was actually a strategy which the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ implemented. He realized that the only way to weaken Mecca, was to seize the caravans that existed surrounding Meccan territories. And because you have to understand that Mecca itself has no resources on its own. It's a trading center, right? So it's in the middle. It gets a lot of input from Syria and then also from Yemen, which is at the south. So Mecca is right here, Syria is here, and Yemen is here. And this is the middle point where you get the trading crosses between the two. So from Yemen, you get access to all the African resources and Indian resources. From Syria, that's when you got resources from the Eurasia part, right? So it was actually a very important pinnacle point for business. And what happened was, the Prophet ﷺ was informed that there is a caravan. There is a caravan that is going from Mecca to Syria. There is a caravan that's going there. And he said, okay, what we got to do first is we got to seize this caravan. Okay? We got to weaken their supplies. We got to weaken their support system. And when they went towards getting the caravan, unfortunately they missed it by a few days. They missed it for a few days. So the first caravan trip, they missed it. Right? Now, what then happened was, when some of the Prophet ﷺ, he sent a few companions to sort of scout the area next to Mecca, scout the area. And what happened was, it was, which month was it? Was it Rajab or something? Huh? Well, no,
It was Ramadan.
It was
It's
Rajab.
one of the things that you can't fight.
Yeah, so there were, do you know that in those times there were 4 months in which fighting was forbidden? There were 4 months in which fighting was forbidden. This was one of those months, right? And you have to understand, they don't have like mobile phones or clocks like we do now, right? So they had to guesstimate from the stars or from the moon, sorry, the moon, what am I saying stars for? From the moon, they had to guesstimate from the moon, is it closed towards the end of the month? And they were in a bit of a debate, it is closed, no, it's closed, etc. They didn't know. And they noticed that there was a small caravan next to them. And they wanted to attack it, right? Now the Prophet ﷺ instructed these Sahabi, these companions, do not attack anyone. All I want you to do is just scout the area. That's all I want you to do. Not to attack, nothing, right? Now, unfortunately, they decided we would attack because this is a caravan, it's in our midst, we can grab it, it's a small booty, maybe the Prophet ﷺ would be happy about it. So one of them shot an arrow, and one of the Qurayshi members that was surrounding the caravan, he died, okay? And some of them escaped back to Mecca, right? Now 2 things happened. For the Muslims, when they took this caravan back to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, the Prophet got extremely angry. He got extremely angry because he specifically told them not to fight. And so much so, there's even traditions that say that he even paid the blood money for this person. So back in those days, if you accidentally kill someone, the only way to recompense you pay blood money for that, right? He even paid the blood money. Now the reaction in Mecca, Mecca used this as a propaganda tool. They said, oh, look at these Muslims right here, They say, they're supposed to uphold the traditions of Arabia. We've agreed there are 4 months in which you cannot fight, yet these Muslims are fighting. Now the Prophet ﷺ was in a very difficult situation, right? So he didn't know what to do. And Mecca was now using this as a propaganda tool. Now obviously the Prophet ﷺ did his best, he paid the retaliation money, and that was the only thing he could do. And he was very cross at the companion who actually shot the arrow. Now the Meccan tribe, what they did was, they fueled this further and further and further, to stock up basically, to create a huge order back from Syria. The caravan that initially went to Syria, they wanted to stock up to get some money and warfare and physical stuff so that they could prepare maybe an attack towards Medina. Now this is when the caravan now was returning, from Syria all the way down to Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ went to intercept it again. Okay, he went to intercept it. Now, who was in charge of leading that caravan? Does anyone have any idea? Sufyan. Well done. Abu Sufyan. Hands up, bro. Hands up. So, Abu Sufyan, he was one of the members of Quraysh, the opposition of Islam. Okay? And back then, he became a Muslim later on, right? And he realized that someone's on the hunt. The Prophet ﷺ is after this guy, right? He realized that. So he took another route. He didn't take the traditional route which you get from Syria all the way down to Mecca. He went like a long-winded route to skip these guys, right? And so they missed the caravan again. Twice they missed the caravan. Now during this process, Abu Sufyan, long story short, he sent someone towards Mecca. And this person, literally, he played a drama act in front of them. What he did was, he had like a camel, and he cut off the ears of the camel, and he put some blood on his shirt. Blood on his shirt. And he said, he was literally acting in front of the Meccan people. He's acting like, the Muslims are attacking us. You've got to get your war, your people ready, we're going to war. So they used that as a further tool to now attack the Muslim army, right? So, bear in mind, the Muslims were only there to get the caravan. 300 of them, right? And when now Mecca was alerted, they brought in an army of 1,000 people, right? And the traditions say they were really arrogant about it. So they had like, they didn't just get 1,000 people. So have you seen like older type warfare? They don't just have the soldiers there, they also have women who sing and dance and all sorts of music that happens. Like, look at Aladdin, for instance. You guys remember Aladdin? Yeah? You guys are not... Huh? Not word, but the style of what's it called? I thought they had cheerleaders in Aladdin, no? No? So these were like cheerleaders, imagine. They were like army cheerleaders. Sorry, I'm just losing it, right? So they had like army cheerleaders then. And so this was used to pump their arrogance, show off their pride. Yeah.
Was it all Meccans? Because I don't think Mecca had a population of 1,000, did it?
Oh, no. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Here we go. Hold on. It's like, yeah. So bear in mind that Mecca didn't have that much of a population. The main people, the main leaders of Mecca who were against the Muslim, they rallied up people from other tribes and other parts of Arabia and then pushed this against the Muslims back then, right? So excellent, thank you for reminding me. Now, so what happened is now you have this standoff. You now have a standoff, Muslims one side, completely at an underdog situation. You then have the non-Muslims on the other side with 1,000 people. They've got plenty of resources. They've got the best armor because they've got the money. They've got the money, right? And they also got the caravan now. They've got all the spears, the swords, etc. that you need. And the Muslims, they had, what, 70 camels, right? And spears, essentially, that's what they had. Stones and spears, essentially. They didn't have any proper shields or armors. So a completely underdog situation. Now, I don't want to get into the detail about the consultation. The Prophet ﷺ, he consulted with the Sahaba. And he said, okay, so this is the situation we have. What do you guys think we should do? And, so they discussed and they said, we're right behind you, Prophet ﷺ. We're right behind you. Even though they were, you have to understand, no, I'm not going to do that. So they said, yeah, we'll go behind you. We'll support you all the way through, right? And I would definitely recommend, read into this hadith. It's a long hadith, but see some of the lessons which a lot of the seerah books mention about it. So, khalas. You now have Muslims on one side, non-Muslims on the other side. Now, we'll take a pause here, right? This is where now it gets really interesting because there are a lot of small incidents, that happen here which we can derive a lot of, lessons from. The first thing which the Prophet ﷺ said was, right. Okay, here's one incident. Okay, I'll mention a few incidents which you might really appreciate. The first incident is one of story of Hudayfa ibn Yaman. Right? This is a story of a man and his father. Okay, and they were close to Mecca, and they wanted to join the Muslim side of fighting. Right?
Abu Jandal as well.
Sorry?
Yes, Abu Jandal as well.
Abu Jagal.
Abu Jandal.
Jandal. No, not Abu Jandal. This is not Abu Jandal. This is I think that's another person. That's another person. That's That's something else. That's something else. So Hudayfa al-Yaman, right? Him and his father, they wanted to go towards the Muslim side because they wanted to fight alongside the prophets and the companions, right? Now, along the way, the Qurayshi army caught them, and specifically Abu Jahl encountered with them, right? Now, Abu Jahl was going to, prison them up, capture them, and lock them up. But they said, no, don't lock us. We're just going to go to Medina. We just have some business there. And then Abu Jahl said, fine. All right, fine, no problem. I'm not going to enslave you. You just have to make an oath, a qasam. You have to swear by God to me, that you are not going to join the side of the Muslims and fight against us. And both of them, they took the oath. Right? So this is Abu Jahl. And Abu Jahl is known as what of Islam? What title does he have? Not you. What is the title that he has of Islam? Any idea? Ignorant. No, that's his nickname. Abu Jahl means the father of ignorance, but he has a specific title in Islam. Any idea? Huh? Enemy of Islam, specifically anything specific? Well done, you're telling the answer, well done. He's known as the Fir'aun of Islam. Abu Jahl is known as the Fir'aun of Islam, right? And so bear in mind, this is the worst enemy of Islam you can get. He took an oath from two Muslims who were concealing themselves as Muslims, right? That you're not supposed to go join the Muslim army and fight against us. Okay, we won't join. Salaam. Now, these two people, they went towards the Muslim army. And they went towards the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And they said to him, Prophet ﷺ, we made this oath with Abu Jahl, a non-Muslim and the worst non-Muslim that existed at that time, right? We've taken this oath, but we can break it for you. So it's like brotherhood, the Islamic brotherhood right there. Now the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said, no. You made an oath and you stick with that oath. And as a result, they did not fight. Now look at this. This is ajib, yani, subhanAllah. This is an amazing incident. How many Muslims were there? 300. How many non-Muslims were there? 1,000. 3-to-1 ratio. Obviously, the Prophet needed as many people as he can on board, right? Yet, why did he not allow them? Because they made a simple oath. I mean, that's a very valuable lesson for me and you. You know how we treat non-Muslims today? We think just because they're non-Muslims, they're not worthy of our oaths sometimes, right? And that's incredibly bad. This is the worst of non-Muslims that existed then. Worst of non-Muslims. And yet, in a situation when they needed numbers, they still didn't participate because of that simple oath. So when, literally, one message here, when you make your word, or when you put your word online with non-Muslims, uphold it. Uphold that word. Very, very important. And very important part of character. Very, very important part of character. You know? So I think that's a very important lesson that we can all derive, inshallah, and learn from this episode. I mean, like, one of the things that we need to understand is that a more, like, broader sense in which we need to extrapolate this is a simple trust as facilities, for instance. So, I mean, like, I'm speaking on behalf of any PC students here, apart from you. And any PC, are master's students allowed free printing? No. Okay, so PC students, right? PC students are allowed free printing. Okay, so we don't have to pay for free printing. And I know the undergrads are a little bit jealous, but hey, tough deal. So we don't have to pay for printing. Now I've seen Muslim brothers and sisters, both Muslim brothers and sisters, PC students, who sometimes use the printing facilities for their own personal gain. So I've got to print my personal airplane ticket, I've got to print my train ticket, blah, 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 blah. Now you have to understand, this is an amana, a trust that's been given to you by the university, only to be used for what? For study purposes.
Do they say you're not actually saying?
Well, I think it's assumed because they're paying for some of us are even what's it called? They're sponsoring us, right? Some of us are even sponsored by specific departments. Some of us are sponsored by governments, so on and so forth, right?
But they don't say what can be used for, what can't be used for.
Oh, okay. So can you justify that on their judgment? Oh, they didn't say. So I'm gonna use it. I'm going to live in ignorance and just use it. Huh?
No restriction there. So.
No. They have specific. For me, they've specifically mentioned this is only for study of department use. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
If you didn't say anything,
okay, you can be a faqih and then write your own fatwas on this and that. But the point of the matter is that, look, how can you justify that on the day of judgment? And when I ask some brothers and sisters, like, oh, I didn't think of that. Thank you, brother. Jazakallah khair, you know. So I think what we need to be is very, very careful. I mean, just because the university is a non-Muslim environment, or just because our friends are non-Muslim, whatever, doesn't mean we lose that trust with them. The Prophet ﷺ, I keep stressing this point again and again and again, before he was a prophet, what was his nickname? Al-Amin. As-Sadiq Al-Amin, the trustworthy, and the truthful one. And we have to, inshallah, uphold that relationship with both our Muslim friends and our non-Muslim friends. So that's one story. Right. Second story. Now, this is quite an interesting one as well. So, while the Muslims, they were going towards the place of Badr, which there are a lot of wells in that place, right? There was a very famous a warrior. I didn't mention his name, unfortunately. So he was a mushrik, he was a polytheist, okay? And you can find this in the Sirah books. And he used to worship, idols, statues. And he knew that the Muslims were fighting against the Quraysh. And this guy loved booty, like physical, armor and all this stuff, because he was a fighter himself. He was like, imagine Hercules, right? He was like the Hercules of the Arabia at that time. He was a very tough champion. Now, he went up towards the Prophet ﷺ. He said, I want to join your army. Let me fight your army, because I want to, he didn't have to say it, but that's what it meant. Now, most of the Muslims are like, yes, we've got the champion on board. We've got the champion on board, right? But the Prophet ﷺ, he asked him one simple question. He said, do you testify there's no God but Allah? He's like, no. And as a result, he didn't join the army, okay? So after a while, that same champion, he goes to the Muslims again. And after maybe like, I don't know, a couple of hours, right? And he goes to the Prophet. Prophet, I want to join your army. Maybe he thought he could work with the Prophet ﷺ. Maybe the tension is getting to him. He's the underdog, that sort of stuff. But again, the Prophet asked him, do you testify there's no God but Allah? He's like, no. So he didn't join the army. Now this happened a third time. Right? And somebody went up to that person. And what's it called? He said to the Prophet, please let me join the Muslim army. And the Prophet asked him again, do you believe in Allah and His oneness? And then the person said yes. Then he said yes. And as a result, the Prophet ﷺ allowed him to join the army. And he fought as a Muslim. Now, from our perspective, it's very easy to see where his intention was. From our perspective, it's very easy to see. But the Prophet ﷺ took his word based on what was apparent. And you learn a very important principle. You cannot dissect someone's heart and figure out their intention. None of us are mind readers. None of us are Sufi masters, right? None of us are angels which we can look through hearts. None of us can do that. None of us can do that. We cannot judge people's intention. We judge on what is apparent and what is on the outside. One of the biggest problems today, which Muslims have, is that we're quick to put judgment on something. We're quick to assess what that person's intention is. Seriously, we're very, very, very bad at that. What's it called? I'll give you, it's not a hadith, it's a saying of a scholar. It says, give your brother and sister 70 excuses. Have you heard of that? It's not a hadith, it's not a saying of the companion, it's a saying of a scholar. So, now, you have to understand, when you look at things apparently, and you see something wrong, you have to be a little clever sometimes. There was a case where a brother and a sister were going out, towards the university, and they were holding hands. And some brothers were like, Astaghfirullah al-Azim, what is this, what is going on here? Isaac is allowing dating, But that wasn't the case. It turned out they were husband and wife. So this is a very negative habit that we sometimes tend to have. We judge with what is apparent, inshallah. And when it comes to helping people, like the Prophet ﷺ just took his word of mouth and that was it. But by the same token, what I also want to share with you guys, right, is that when you're looking at something, sometimes the apparent is not as holistic as you want it to be. You have to be a bit more smarter and give people time to be able to justify themselves. I'll share one simple story just to explain that concept. Very simple concept. No worries, it's not. So there's a story. This is a story about a school with black students and white students, right? And the teachers noticed that there's a lot of aggression. So if especially in the United States, I think you probably saw this. There's a lot of internal circles within American schools. You've got the whites here and the blacks there. You never saw this?
No.
You're Malay, that's why. So, so you have that distinction, right? Now, the teachers of the school, they wanted to do something that could provide a solution for this, right? So they said, "Khalas, let's maybe have a camping trip. Maybe that could ease something between the two." And when they were out of the trip, they were two close friends. So these were the rare exceptions of that school. It was a white guy and a black guy. White guy and black guy, right? And what happened was, the white guy and the black guy, they were good buddies. They were going out towards the desert, just chilling. And it was a very hot day. It was 50 degrees that day, right? And with a black guy, apparently he got pricked by one of the cactus. Those sharp, pointy plants that come up, right? And unfortunately, that cactus was poisonous. Now, when you're in the middle of a desert, right, the only way you can heal that prick is either by some sort of antidote or your spit. Your spit is antiseptic. Now, the black guy, because it's very hot, he lost all his saliva. He couldn't spit. His mouth was so dry. So he asked his friend, the white guy, please spit on my leg. Right? Please spit on my leg, otherwise the cactus poison can kill me. And the white guy, he spit on his leg, right? To save him, by the way, to save him. Now one of the teachers across, she saw this. Now her objective was to remedy the situation between white students and black students. And here she is seeing a white guy spitting on a black guy. She goes up to him, slaps him, and he said, "You're expelled." Right? Now you see here, things have been so lost because of loss of context and holisticity. So when you're judging people in the apparent, it's very good to take them by what's apparent. But it's also very, very important to judge things on a holistic and contextual level. You guys with me? Very important lesson. Again. Right. So that's the second story. The third story, and I really love this story. It's a very, 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 very beautiful story. This is the story of Ibn Ghaziyah. Okay. Now this is when the Prophet ﷺ, when he was lining up the companions, right? He was lining up the companions for war. You're supposed to stand there. You're standing there, etc., etc. And he, like commanders, they have like a stick to point and do ishara. Now he accidentally poked one of the companions, and this was Ibn Ghaziyah.
What's
right?
ishara?
Ishara matlab to point. To point at someone. Sorry. Yeah. So he pointed at one of the companions, and it pricked him like a poke, like a simple poke. Nothing major. And Ibn Ghaziyah, he complained to the Prophet. Imagine the enemy is right there. The enemy is right there. They're just literally about to head off for war, right? And this companion says, "You pricked me. I want to take my retaliation." I swear to God, this is in the secret book. I swear to God. Now, when we look at the situation, like, what the hell is wrong with you? That's what we would say, right? What is wrong with you? We're in an important battlefield. You're asking me about this for now? But the companion said, no. He said, "I want my retaliation." Now look at the response of the Prophet ﷺ. Rather than arguing, debating, or being cross at this companion, he said, "Okay." So he took off his shirt, right? And he said, "Do whatever you want." Literally, that's all he did. Do whatever you want. And the companion, his true intention was not to hurt the Prophet ﷺ. Actually, he went and kissed the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet was confused. What is wrong with you? Like, I'm just saying contemporary language. Like, why did you do that? Right? And the companion says, "This might be my last dying moments. This might be my last dying moments. And I want to remember that I touched your skin the last time." Like, that's intense love. That's deep love. Right? That's proper brotherhood right there. But the reason why I want to focus on this story was because of the hidden dimension that exists in this. I told you, the enemy was right there. Like literally a few minutes away from starting this battle. And this companion just complained about a prick. Like that. And the Prophet ﷺ, rather than complaining, what did he do? He took off his shirt and let him retaliate. He allowed the other person a chance to take his right back. Right? This is in a very, very important situation. And what do we learn from that as Muslims? What do we learn from that? Is that when we have done something wrong to people, we must not hesitate to give them their right back. We must not hesitate. In Surah Fatiha, what do you recite in Surah Fatiha about the Day of Judgment? Maliki Yawmuddin. That's translated as Master of the Day of Judgment. Right? But Deen doesn't mean judgment. It doesn't mean judgment. Deen actually means your affairs, your transactions that you have. On that day, every single transaction that you do will be exposed, whether it's with Allah or with people, right? And if you have harmed anyone, you will have to answer for that on the Day of Judgment. You will have to answer for that on the Day of Judgment. Mufti Taqi Usmani, brilliant, I love this scholar so much, mashallah, may Allah have mercy on him. He mentioned, this guy you have to understand, he's the Grand Mufti. He was once the Grand Mufti of Pakistan. He was on the Sharia panel for the Shafi'i school. And he mentions in his books that if you take the whole Sharia, and divide it into 4 books, only one of those books is between the rights you and Allah, right? The rights between you and Allah. Those other 3 books would be the rights between you and His creation, showing you the emphasis on how to treat the creation of Allah properly, right? I'll share with you a personal experience that happened with me. So, have any of you heard of Dr. Reda? There, put your hands up. You've heard of him. Have any of you else heard of him, Dr. Reda? Have you heard of him? Okay, so I'd recommend. He's a very good scholar, mashallah. He's from Egypt, and he works with Al-Maghrib Institute. He's a very well known scholar. So he had a tafsir course, Tafsir Surah Rahman, 55th Surah of the Quran in Manchester. And I went to that course. And I loved it. It was a very beautiful surah. It's a very beautiful environment. Your brothers and sisters were there for learning for the sake of Allah. And so, what's it called? I finished the course, and then I was heading on the train back towards Nottingham. And what happened was there was a Chinese girl, non-Muslim. She was a non-Muslim, probably Cantonese or I don't know, Mandarin sister. And she got onto the train, and she actually lost all her money, and she lost her credit cards, right? And so you know the train porter, the one who comes and checks her tickets? He was walking down the aisle, and he says to the Chinese girl, okay, so, I need either a train ticket or you need to pay for your train ticket. And she said, I don't have any money, I lost my credit card, I lost my train tickets, can you please make an exception? And he's like, and he's like, no, I can't do that. You have to either pay me or you have to show me your ticket. She had neither. So, what happened was, he was going to that train porter, he was going to call the police. He was going to call the police, right? Now, there was a brother next to me, right? I ignored the situation. Literally, I was on this aisle, she was on that aisle, right? I ignored the situation, I didn't want to do anything. And there was a brother next to me who was on the course. His brother was also on the course, on the tafsir course. And he goes up to the train porter and says, excuse me, how much is the train ticket? And the porter says, it's 17 pounds. So the brother, the Muslim brother next to me, he takes out the credit card, says, here, charge it on my card. And the porter does the payment thing, and he gives it back to the guy. And the Chinese girl's like, oh, thank you, like she, the Chinese style. She says, thank you very much, right? Now, and then the brother starts giving her da'wah about Islam slowly, says, yeah, we do this because of Islam, etc., etc. And I'm thinking, astaghfirullah, all my days, like, bro, she's a non-Muslim, she's Chinese, why are you helping a stranger, right? And then the brother, he mentioned something very important. He recollected something which we learned in Tafsir Surah Rahman. It says, وَالْأَرْضِ وَضَعَهَا لِلْأَنَامِ I have created the world for all creations. I have created the world for all creations. And then Sheikh, the Dr. Battle Badr, he further emphasized this by saying, in Surah Fatiha, what's the first ayah? Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, right? Praise belong to Allah, He is the Lord of the entire creations, of all the creations, right? Now, the brother said something very powerful to me, He said to me, you looked at this girl as a non-Muslim, right? But I looked at this girl as a creation of Allah. And if I help this creation of Allah on this day when she was in need, Allah will help me on the day of judgment when I am in need. And that's pretty deep. That is very, very deep. So, inshallah, make sure that, especially in your transactions with people, when you try to help people, whether it be Muslim, non-Muslim, even animals. Even animals have rights which we need to fulfill. Even the earth will testify either for you or against you on the day of judgment. Like, sometimes when you see Muslim brothers in the mosque, have you ever noticed that sometimes Muslim brothers, when they pray their fard salah, then they go in different parts of the masjid and they pray their nafar or sunnah. You know why they do that?
It's a sunnah.
Huh? It's a sunnah, but you know why they did it? What's the wisdom behind it?
Each location testifies.
Well, that's it. But the reason why people change location is because that location which you've prayed on will testify on the day of judgment, he prayed here. It will testify on the day of judgment. So everything has rights, be it Muslims, non-Muslims, animals, and the earth around you. So be very, very careful, inshallah, in trying to preserve those rights for the sake of Allah, inshallah. And also for the sake of your akhirah. For the sake of your akhirah, right? So that was the third story that I wanted to mention. Okay, so what happens then? Then the Battle of Badr happens, people die, left, right, etc. Right?